For this lesson, I've just created a new project from our game template. This is a great place to start just because it is already set up with a touches began function. So if you remember how this works, when you touch anywhere on the screen, it will create a spaceship and start it spinning. Okay, so let's take a deeper look at how this works. This touches began function receives a NS set with the touches. So if you look down here in this function, we have what is called a for in loop. So for every object within this set of objects, we're going to do something. So for each touch passed in, we're going to get the location of the touch. Now if you're just tapping the screen with a single finger, then only one touch will be sent in. But because this is a multi-touch screen, you can receive a lot more touches at once. You also have some other methods such as touches ended, touches moved, and touches cancelled. And all of these functions respond to screen touch events. If I add in touches ended, I can then use the same logic up here to pull it apart and do something for each location that it has been touched. Now I'm just going to take the code back to the point where we had it, where the spaceship was added to the scene, but I'm going to leave out the part where it starts rotating. So if I build and run, this is how it will look. So that's how you handle screen touches. But what about in the case of the Mac, where you're going to have screen clicks? Instead of starting a new project for the Mac, what I'm going to do is add another target to this project. This will help you start to understand how we put together a cross-platform game. So I'm going to go to File and Add New Target. Okay, you choose a template just as you would for creating a new project. So go to OS X, Application, and then Game. Now you give it a product name, something a little different to the previous product's name, and you can add that to your project. Now you'll notice up here under Schemes, we now have two schemes. If you build and run for the Mac, it will run with all the code for the Mac. You can see over here that we have mouse down as a function instead of touches began. So the Mac does have different functions which run, but they do essentially the same thing. Except on a Mac, you can't have multiple touches. So if I run the application and start clicking around the screen, you'll see it does the exact same thing. Just like where there's multiple functions for the touches, there's also multiple functions for mouse changes. So as well as mouse down, there is mouse up, etc. If I was to copy all this code into the mouse up as well as mouse down, and then build and run the application, then a spaceship will be created every time I click down, and also when I release the click. So if I just click once in a location, you can see two spaceships have been created in the same spot. If I hold the mouse down, move it, and then release it, then another ship will be created in a different location. Now if you were to use this in a cross-platform environment where you're going to be working with both screen touches and mouse clicks, there are some ways you can simplify this process. I'm just going to come up here and create a new group and call it Shared. If I now grab one of my game scenes and drag it into this folder, then go ahead and delete the other game scene. Now when you come into this game scene, you just have to look at the target membership. This will list all of the schemes. You can see that it's turned on for iOS. I want to turn it on for my Mac one as well. Now straight away you get an error because of the touches began, because on the Mac there is no touches began. And this is a project which is set up for both systems. If I change back to my iOS scheme, then the error goes away. So this will only report errors for the current scheme you have selected. Okay, so let's take out all this code for now and write a preprocessor if statement, which starts with a pound sign. So we're going if the OS is equal to iOS. We can also add an else and an end if. So now we can put in two different sets of code within to the same class. So in iOS we're going to have a touches began, and we're just going to do a simple print line to the debugger saying that the screen was tapped. In the Mac section, we're just going to put a mouse down and make it print the same message but saying that the screen was clicked. So if I now run this project for iOS using the iOS simulator, it'll tell me the screen was tapped whenever I click down on it. If I switch this over to the Mac, it will now tell me that the screen was clicked. So that's a very simple implementation where you have both control schemes in the same scene.